Thank you, Luisa. What a wonderful presentation. We'll certainly be thinking about ways we can work with Volpe going forward. Um, so this first panel discussion of the 2024 Transportation Infrastructure Durability Conference is on building bridges into the next century. As mentioned earlier, we're not just talking about building 100+ year infrastructure, but also how our collective organizations are working together to achieve those goals. In this panel, we're discussing how our organizations are working together to solve most of our most challenging transportation issues. It's my pleasure to introduce you to our panelists. We just heard from two panelists, Luisa Paiewonsky, Director of the Center of Infrastructure Systems and Technology at USDOT Volpe Center, and Dr. Bill Davids, Professor, Civil and Environmental Engineering at University of Maine. The final panelist is Joyce Taylor, Chief Engineer at MaineDOT. She has been a terrific leader and source of inspiration, helping us all work together to research and build a more durable Maine infrastructure. So please come on up to the microphones. So to ask a question of our panelists, please stand behind one of the two microphones placed at the front of the room, one on each side. We will alternate questions between each microphone. But while we wait for people to come up, we'll kick it off with a question for Joyce and Bill and Luisa. We heard from Luisa about a lot of the biggest issues she's facing in transportation and what their agency is doing to combat that. But to Bill and Joyce, what are your 2 or 3 top high priority issues and challenges in transportation? And can you talk about what your agencies are doing to address them?
Is this on? Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's so much going on. I think, though the resilience piece is really front and center for MaineDOT right now. And I think, the storms in December and January were a wake-up call. Here in Maine, we haven't had a significant storm that affected us statewide since really Tropical Storm Irene. And we really saw something, especially in the December storm, because so many people talk about sea level rise and the coast, but it feels to me that we have forgotten inland Maine at times. And I think from a transportation point of view, we lost infrastructure in the December storm. In the coastal area, the towns are going to typically lose more than the state is going to lose or be more impacted. We certainly had closures in January, but I think we really need to think about, our system in terms of both durability and the future, what future proofing looks like. I think frankly, a lot of communities aren't ready to have conversations about having bridges go higher, wider, because you have to take property, especially along the coast. You start taking property in historic areas. And up until this winter, I don't think people wanted to have those conversations. We've talked about things like, can we design a bridge and then 50 years from now, lift it up 2 feet, lift it up 4 feet? Can we have the substructure now and lift? How do we build roads higher, but yet at the same point, we have wetland impacts, we have environmental impacts. Eric will tell you when he comes up that we kicked off a number of what we thought were easy adaptation projects to raise causeways 4 feet up. And they've been very, very complex with lots of desires and wants from NGOs and environmental folks who want us to restore wetlands and want us to restore salt marsh. And we're like, we just want to go up 4 feet so that the fire people can get through or CMP can get through. These are very complex issues, but public safety is at risk today. We don't have time to have decades-long conversations like we've been having in Machias, for example. So I think, there's a lot of policy wrapped up in the engineering piece here. And I think engineering and policy are going together more and more. And I think when I went to UMaine, we had maybe one class where we sort of talked about policy, and I think it was a senior level class, and it was mostly probably involving money. not people. So I think it's something that we're gonna have to get more savvy about.
Thanks, Joyce. What would you add to that conversation, Bill?
It's a really hard question for a professor to answer. But yeah, I mean, our job at a university is to try to look to where the challenges are. And Joyce brought up something immediately, of course, is durability, coastal infrastructure, big problems. And a lot of the things you'll hear us talk about today are not really related to coastal infrastructure per se. Some of the things we're working on, how can we adapt our technologies to function in that environment and create more durable infrastructure? And we've had meetings with the DOT about this, and we're looking at solutions. And the university is very focused on that with an initiative right now on how to get Maine develop solutions out there to increase the resilience of our coastal infrastructure. And these are tough problems. The other thing I would say, I mean, I'm a Mainer. I've always lived in rural Maine or relatively rural Maine. Joyce brought up inland Maine. I see a big challenge too, as kind of the rural-urban divide, right? And a lot of things like AVs and high tech, they work well in urban environments. You'll hear more about this later, I'm sure. They don't work so well when you don't even have stripes, lane striping on the road, right? And there are a lot of people in a place like Maine, we are dependent on cars. There is no public transportation when you live in a town of 1,000 people and you're 50 miles outside of Bangor or Portland or what have you. So meeting those real needs for good transportation infrastructure while advancing technologies that are serving larger numbers of people in urban areas, that's a huge challenge in my mind, right? Because Joyce, you know far better than I, but Maine has a really large network of roads and bridges for a very small number of people. And every mile of road costs a lot of money and every bridge costs a lot of money. It's not serving very many people, but those people aren't going anywhere and they shouldn't have to. They're a vital part of the state. How do we cost effectively serve them while we improve things?
I'll just pitch in on that a little bit. If my colleague Ben Foster was here, our bridge maintenance engineer, I think one of the things that we're dealing with, we have a really robust natural environment, which is an awesome thing. But we also are finding ourselves in terms of protecting this natural environment, especially for fish passage, which also has benefits for handling big storms. But the state of Maine, we are gaining bridges at a pace that we've never seen before. Local bridges are becoming bridges that the state has to own at this point because of the size increase that's happening due to both of those things, fish passage and hydrologic concerns. At the same point, we have EV truck technology on the horizon. We have a boatload of old bridges that we're carrying legal loads right now. But I just got asked the other day by a group that's working on EVs for trucks. Hey, how do you feel about like passing a law that ignores basically, we forgive the weight of the EVs even though they're higher weight, and we won't load rate for those. I'm like, what? No, I don't support that. The weight is the weight is the weight. I mean, you can't just wave, piece of paper and make it go away. But yet that's how people are thinking, is like, oh, we've got to get EVs in. And so there's just all this tension, I think, around our transportation system. It's getting older and older in this state. We're gaining more and more as a state. And, financially, I'm not sure how we're going to replace all the bridges we need to replace. Our costs have gone up significantly. So it feels like Debbie Downer sometimes when I look at the bridges, but we really have to take a hard look at, I think, materials that we're using. One of the things we're talking about is when we are on salt water, when we are in areas like an I-295 where work zones are incredibly expensive, maybe we need to use stainless steel in a bridge. Maybe we are going to do some materials that we're going to pay more, even though, there are those who are like, I don't want to pay that much. This is ridiculous. We're already paying way too much for these bridges. But I think we have to figure out piecemeal a little bit, where are we going to dump some extra money into some of our resources to make sure that we're giving them all the life we can, because we have too much to take care of to just kind of have replaceable bridges, if you will.
Yeah, it's a great point. And we've talked about this with the commissioner, and he talks about cost effectiveness, not necessarily the lowest cost, but what's the cost over the lifetime. Just a reminder, anybody who has questions, feel free to come up to the microphone for these great panelists. But that's also a good transition. And the next question I have is implementation, driving research to implementation to solve some of these issues that we're facing right now. Because, as you mentioned, Joyce, some of these things we can't afford to wait 10 years or 15 years as some implementation tasks happen. But putting research results into practice often takes much time and effort. In the research field, it's one of the biggest hurdles that all agencies face. So how can we speed up the pace of implementation of beneficial research results? And that can be for anybody, but I guess I'll start with Luisa, since you didn't get to answer the last question.
I didn't, but I was fascinated by the responses I heard from my fellow panelists. I think that's a great question. Implementation, even absent these current issues, has been a longstanding thorn in the side of implementing agencies. How do you get things more multidisciplinary, working on projects all around the table at once instead of this traditional station to station approach that really causes delays. And some of it has to do with organizational culture, leadership saying this isn't acceptable. I want this to move faster. I want us to re-engineer our processes. Some of it is out of the control of the agencies, for example, external permitting, but much of it is within the control of agencies. And I think learning from other states, just as I pointed out how much Massachusetts learned from our colleagues in Maine, getting access to best practices, using the federal government as a convener so that states can talk to other states and learn what's working. And then I think what we've recently set up, the Project Delivery Center of Excellence, is currently focused on new recipients of federal funding, so may not be the solution here, but I think eventually will come out as that federal government's attempt to collect and centralize best practices so that states can learn from one another.
Jeff knows that at MaineDOT, we're actually pretty unique in how we look at research. And my predecessor, Ken Sweeney, did something that I think was really wise at the time, and he put research under the chief engineer. We're one of the only DOTs in the country that has a research department under somebody directly in the executive office. I love it. I don't know how Jeff loves it, but Dale did leave me a nice card when he left, but I think it's really critical to be tied to research at a management level, because Jeff knows we were at a meeting yesterday talking about interstate routing. We've been talking about interstate routing for 10 flipping years. Now, can we solve that problem? No, we haven't yet. And so, but what we've said is, let's stop spinning and let's turn it into more of a true research project, but let's have pieces of it identified with certain times and certain things we're going to do. And we're going to eliminate some things that we keep talking about. Are they part of the issue or not? But I think one of the things that we talk a lot about at MaineDOT is research has to look a little bit different. We have the university to do, the educated long-term research projects that I have to tell you are so critical to the work we do. At AASHTO, all of the design manuals at AASHTO are research-based. That is important. That's what sets us aside, I think, from other folks who just throw out an idea and print it, and all of a sudden, everyone says, hey, why don't you do it this way? Well, because we haven't researched it, we don't know that it works. But I think there are things we can do to better educate ourselves. Jeff knows our research group does a lot of white papers for us now, where they gather all the other research that's been done and put it in one place so that we educate ourselves before we have the conversation. And I think so many of us have done this work for so long, it's really easy to just draw on what we think, and we lean on people who've been around for a long time. But I think sometimes it's important as a department to stop, educate, and have a conversation based on what others have done, but still know where you're heading. Where are you heading? And I think that helps with the timeline.
Yeah, that's great. me and Ulrich and Ulrich Musogano over there, who's a part of our research team, we just went to a national research conference and we went to a peer exchange before that, and we're a little bit surprised to hear how little the research departments at state DOTs often work on implementation. But I think that's part of our organization working for the chief engineer is we hear about all the issues that people are facing in real time, the practitioners are facing, and we get a pulse on the problems of the people we work with. And we don't want to build things that go on the shelf. We want to build things that are solving problems and then help put that into action. And something we're working on, that Ulrich's working on with us, is working on what Joyce was mentioning, a strategic direction and plan to put some of these things in place that can't be implemented with a snap of a finger. And we have a question up there, but I'll go to Bill real quick about implementation, because some of your projects have been implemented really fast in coordination with projects. So I want to hear a little bit from you on that.
Well, really fast means maybe 5 years, right? But
Compared to other research.
I mean, my perspective is fairly narrow, right? It's bridge infrastructure, new materials and technologies related to that. Number one, it won't ever happen without the partnerships. The Maine DOT is very willing to frankly take a risk, and they believe in what we do and they support it, and they're willing to go out there and pay a little more money for the first bridge or two and take that chance. And that is a very unusual mindset. And number one, it won't work without that, okay? Number two, you've got to have a path and a partner for commercialization. Look at the G-beam out there in about 4 years. The only reason that happened, or another big driver, is the fact that AIT, our commercial partner, already existed and was ready to license the patent and start fabricating this and designing these. And the DOT knew them and believed in them. So those pieces were in place. No question that has to happen. But the other thing that's incumbent on us as faculty members, I mean, look, I teach, I do research, I publish, I love to work with my students. I've got, I don't know, probably half a dozen former students out here in the audience who worked on these things with me. But it's also my job to go beyond the research and do things. Okay, we give webinars on the design of this, you give short courses at conferences, you look to developing a design guide, you start working with AASHTO. You have to do those things, because if you don't do those things, it will end up sitting on a shelf. You'll get a couple of pilot projects out there and it will die, right? And nobody's going to advertise it for you. As an academic, I don't like to use the word advertise, but it's kind of what I have to do. I got to get it out there in front of people and explain the significance of it without deep diving into the technical side, but say, this is why it's good, and this is why it should be used, and this is the basis for it. So that doesn't always happen, but it's a necessary part of it.
Great, thanks. Question, Reed?
We have time for one?
Yes.
All right, great, thanks. Well, sort of as a segue into the next session and thinking about the title of Building Bridges into the Next Century, Chief Engineer Taylor, you spoke about adapting to climate change with sea level rise and things like that. I'm wondering, given that Maine is sort of a national leader with the Maine Climate Council from the governor's office and all of the efforts towards future proofing in terms of mitigating climate change, how do you balance with all of the other safety and various requirements you have regarding transportation infrastructure, also mitigating climate change? I'm just kind of curious how that factors into the picture there. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that balance means talking to our customers, and you have to have conversations with people to see, especially the communities you're working in. We can't just slap a design on a table, waltz in and say, this is what we're doing, and waltz out. That's just not the way it's going to work anymore. I think you have to be forthright and honest about what we can do. I often say at meetings, Maine DOT can't be everything to everybody. We just can't. And so what are the priorities for that particular situation? Safety is paramount, but I think a lot of times this whole climate conversation has gotten wrapped up in terms of people not understanding how it impacts them, because it has been so long since we've seen a statewide storm. I think what was different, and I think the conversations have changed a little bit, because it was safety. When Western Maine was literally cut off, okay, how many of you know Ben Foster? All right. So when Ben Foster calls me, I think it was December 19th at 7 o'clock, and is yelling in the phone and says, oh my God, Western Maine is Armageddon. And I'm like, who the hell is this? Because is this Ben? Because he's not emotional. And I mean, he was like, oh my God, I can't get to the bridges. People are cut off. We can't get there to inspect them. Everyone's screaming. CMP is just beside themselves. They can't get power to people. I think, we have to help explain to people the transportation, we are a first responder. The transportation system is used by first responders. People will not get power, they will not get EMS service if our transportation system is not able to be traveled. And I think that we don't do a very good job of explaining that. So part of prioritizing all of that is having those conversations. I think where a lot of I think some of that is coming together. What is tough is a lot of the desire, we have a lot of desire, every road should be bikeable. Every road should be walkable. And you have conversations about, well, what are priority areas in terms of adding bike lanes or adding sidewalks? Those are very expensive things. When you have to add an extra beam to a bridge, I mean, it starts to get expensive. But yet there are, for equity, for lots of different reasons we want to connect our customers, but we're not going to do it everywhere. Those, I think, have been the harder conversations to have, where we are choosing to not maybe put a multi-use trail just because somebody has a vision that it's coming in 20 years. But I'm hopeful that with the storms that happened, we can take advantage of that momentum and have better conversations with communities about resilience. I always say, whether you believe in climate change, I bet you believe climate's changing. Get over the terminology and think about what you face at your own house, or, people, do you know somebody? I have family in Vermont. I have an aunt who's been flooded out at least 4 times. I think it's coming this weekend. I mean, people are being impacted and we all know somebody.
Great. We only have 3 minutes left in the session. I see a question from Joe. If you can direct it at one person, I think we have a little bit of time.
Bill, this is directed to Luisa. So the infrastructure bill has been huge and it's having tremendous impact. But the American Society of Civil Engineers has said we need trillions more. I've seen 15 trillion. So we're 3 years out of the 5 years with the infrastructure bill. Do you see more infrastructure bills on the horizon? Are they laying the groundwork for round 2, round 3?
Well, I would not presume to make predictions for Congress, but I do know that there are conversations going on right now among the states. I know that AASHTO has started the conversation. I know in USDOT, they're starting to talk about it. It's what we learned with the Accelerated Bridge Program in Massachusetts. It's great to have a huge infusion of funds, but you need to have, just as in with any capital asset, you need to have steady state investment to keep it in good shape. And better yet, to make improvements to it. So the conversation is starting 2 years out, and it would be great to see a continued high level of federal investment in transportation.
Thank you.
Speaking as a private citizen, I'm not speaking for the DOT, but I think Secretary Buttigieg would agree that it would be great to see high level of investment.
That's great. I'll just add one thing to the conversation. I think one way that you solve these transportation issues of tomorrow and today, and one way that we find things that are high likelihood of implementation is communication early and often with all the stakeholders, as well as some of the things that Bill mentioned, technology transfer, getting this information to the right people that will be implementing. And I'll just quick plug we have Don Bickford here. He's our MaineDOT innovation coordinator. We've got a booth out there, and we've organized this MaineDOT Innovates thing, this group, and it's about internal communication with all of our stakeholders. And we also have a MaineDOT State Transportation Innovation Council. I've seen a few of the members here. So if you get a chance, stop by that booth and talk to her about what we're trying to do. Thank you for the great panel discussion. I'd like to take a moment to remind you to vote for your best in show picks for the student poster contest. Everyone was given 3 tickets with your name tags to place in the bucket of your 3 favorite posters and engaging student presenters. Voting will close at 3 p.m. If you have any questions about the Best in Show voting, please contact Amanda Collmore. Also, be sure to check out our exhibitor atrium to connect with our expo sponsors. We're going to take a short break and then we will return for a session on composites, the greener alternative. We would like to thank Spire for sponsoring the breaks for our conference. The University of Maine Office of Strategic Partnerships, Innovation, Resources, and Engagement is dedicated to building strategic partnerships that support new and existing businesses through innovation, engagement, and workforce development. We are committed to fostering student success through innovation, entrepreneurship, and meaningful work opportunities. And thank you.